Okay, two majors down, two to go in the men's golfing season. And for US Open week here, powered by Pinnacle, why not delve into trying to work out who on earth is going to get the business done at LA Country Club come Sunday night, the 123rd staging of the famous US Open. We've never seen it staged on this golf course, such as the nomadic nature of this event. One thing is for sure, though, it is going to be a tricky test of golf. So tasked with maintaining our good form at guiding you through the runners and riders this year so far. With me, James Gregg, here on Major Talk, former LET star and now Sky Sports analyst, coach, and one of my favourite people to talk about golf with, Sophie Walker, and a man who has been on fire so far on our podcast this year, Brian Nicholson, who, for you real keen beans, is an author of several brilliant books, Hypnotized by Numbers, Angles and Edges, and the Modern Sports Betting Trilogy. I can't think of anyone better to spend the next 30 minutes or so discussing what's in store this week. Pinnacle.com is something that you should probably have in your hands. And just looking at all the odds ahead of this week, things will change, of course, as the week develops. So get your bets on early is what I would suggest, because we like to swing the markets a little bit with some of our picks. It's one of those where I think we'll just talk about the course first of all, because for weeks and weeks and weeks, people have been waxing lyrical about this as a venue. But for betting terms, we actually don't have a clue about it. I think it's staged a few LA Opens 40, 50 years ago. But other than that, we've got no sample size whatsoever. So how do we go about trying to work out who's going to come out on top on a golf course that we don't know a great deal about? Brian and Sophie, take it away.
Yeah, so again, I like to read the quotes and stuff. So it's pretty close to Riviera. So I heard when a lot of the guys were playing there just earlier this year, they actually went and they played at a country club. So I think Fleetwood played a practice round with Shane Lowry and all that. And Rory was there. He said he didn't play because conditions are going to be much different. They're much softer back then. It's going to be much faster and firmer on it now. But just reading all the quotes and all that, I kind of got that. Like Lowry was on about you could be 50 yards back in the fairway or 50 yards further down on the rough, and it's not really going to matter. You're going from there. What he's kind of saying is off the tee is not that important this year. It's all about the second shot and then creativity and imagination around the greens and stuff like that. And I have a little team in mind this week that it's going to be sort of like Sedgefield, like a Donna Ross kind of. A lot of the greens are sloping back to front. They're not so undulating, but they're sloping back to front. And the guys were saying you can't short side yourself, you can't go over the greens and all that. And I have that kind of down as an angle, and I'm looking for guys that are kind of performing well at Sedgefield over the years. And there's a few of them coming up onto the radar this year. So yeah, just a lot of player quotes, and I like kind of looking at that kind of thing.
Okay, that's nice. Sophie, what have you kind of worked out really from about LA Country Club?
Well, I look at what players like, who plays well on West Coast compared to East Coast. So you'd be looking at somebody like Max Homer, who has won nearly every single PGA event over on that West side. We didn't pick up on Brooks Koepka, the New York thing, did we? And hold our hands up. So we're looking into more of that now. The course setup is by the USGA. So I'm also looking for players that have done well around those types of golf courses. So you're looking at US amateurs, US juniors. Matt Fitzpatrick won the US Open last year. He was a US amateur champion in the past. And then I've just been over on the men's DP World Tour. And I sat and spoke with Sean Crocker last night over a drink. And he was saying that the greens at LA Country Club are massive, absolutely massive. He says you could hit every single green for 18 holes and walk up with 80. There'd be parts of the greens that like you were saying there, Brian, that there's a subtlety to it. It's not like Augusta slopes, but you're that far away. And if you leave yourself above the hole, even if it's a 2 or 3 footer, you've got a 10 footer coming back. So that feeling of, yes, second shots are important, not just hitting the green, it's where you hit. And I'm also looking at players that don't 3-putt too often.
Yeah, so I've got actually in the model, I've actually got lag putting as one of the big kind of key metrics, and I've weighted that strongly in the model as well. So what you were saying there, above the hole, and the thing is, well, Memorial, Murfield Village is very similar. can't short side yourself there or leave yourself above the hole. So if you could actually, I'd say the leaderboard at Memorial would be maybe a good guide to maybe what will happen this week, and whoever is kind of playing well there, it might look a little similar. Hovland is like tee to green machine, but I'm just a little worried about Hovland. If he misses the greens here, it's not like Memorial where there's thick rough where you can just, it kind of negates some of the the better guys' ability there. Whereas there is thick rough around the greens here too, but there's also real deep bunkering and a lot of sort of mountain areas and runoff areas. So I think guys like Jordan Spieth are gonna absolutely love. And even Phil Mickelson, remember he did a Kiowa Island out of nowhere, and that was all about kind of creativity and imagination, imagination on the greens and what you can do with the short game, and probably again.
It's classic in the build up to a US Open week. If you open Twitter and you follow any kind of amount of golf people, you're seeing all these videos of people dropping the ball into the rough and going, look how thick this is. And I mean, does anybody need that anymore? I'm not sure, but maybe
it's only in certain places as well. So I've seen other pictures and big false fronts on the greens and runoffs down and like really tight areas, and the likes of Colin Markowa and Hovland.
It's been an interesting week in golf. We were going to talk a little bit about the merger and how that's going to affect sports betting, but in truth, we don't know any of the finer details yet. I suspect by the time we record our Open Championship podcast in a few weeks' time, we will have a better idea as to what it's going to look like in terms of players rejoining the PGA Tour and if they're actually going to be allowed to do that, if they're going to be playing on reduced status, if it's going to be sponsors' invites, whatever. So we'll kind of skip over that, I think, just to mark your card. I think it seems strange recording a golf podcast and not mentioning that. Clearly, it is going to change the golfing landscape, but not at the moment. It's not going to affect this week, certainly. So we'll kind of skirt around that for the moment, wait for those details, and then hopefully come middle of July, we've got a better idea as to how things are going to look. You mentioned Victor Hovland there, Brian. I think, actually, I'm going to chuck a name in this early doors. I actually think he does provide the best chance for a European winner because he's not missed a cut this season. He's playing a lot better. Obviously the short game was something you mentioned, but he's turning that not into a strength yet, you wouldn't say, but it's certainly not a glaring weakness of his game yet. However, you are right in saying that these venues aren't your traditional short game.
But it's interesting. It's interesting what Sophie said there. Like she said, the greens are so big, maybe he doesn't miss a green. You think 80% plus TIR percentage. Yeah. And
he does play the tough
fly
courses
away
well.
From the field. Huh?
He does play those tough golf courses really well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he loves them. Yeah.
There's only been two people defend a US Open title in history, and one of those is Brooks Koepka, of course. Matt Fitzpatrick, decent form, just outside the top 20 at the Canadian Open. He had a top 10 at the Memorial. Obviously, the defending champion from last year at Brookline. How do we like his chances, Sophie? Because he's sneaky long these days, and his short game, all-round game is very solid. And like you mentioned, the USGA setup link as well.
Yeah, I always seem to look at Americans, though, for US Open, because just, of how well they play. 7 out of the last 11 are Americans that have won round there. I think last year was a standout because he'd won at Brookline before. And many of us have said, a bit like Tommy Fleetwood, if he's going to win one, we think it'll be a US Open or an Open Championship. He's under the radar this year a little bit more than last year. He was certainly trending. But like you say, that defending champion tagline, it doesn't get done very often. So that's what would put me off from Matt, just the fact that not many people defend the US Open. It's a big week to be at the national champion of America. The media will be all over him. He'll have lots of commitments. Obviously, he's quite a pro PGA Tour player. He would have been offered money, I'm sure, to go to live, turned it down. I imagine amongst the players, there'll be a little bit of disgruntlement, the ones that didn't take it, and the ones that did, maybe they've got a bit more of a stride, a bounce in their step.
I think so. You're right.
And a weight in their pockets.
It's an immeasurable, that,
walking into the locker rooms this week. I think Matt, like I said, some of the quotes are saying it doesn't really matter what you do off the tee anyway. It's kind of fairways and
yeah. Oh, I can't hear you, Brian.
He's got a real good short game, obviously. So it's just mathematically, it's just hard to win a golf tournament. It doesn't matter if you won last week. And what it's just still, what is he? 25-1 or something, like 4% chance.
Yeah.
Well, it's just hard to do it back to back.
Well, if you have done what I kind of recommended you do at the start of the podcast, and you've got the odds up, you'll likely see that Scotty Scheffler is the favourite. How do we rate that in terms of value? Because I just think at 8.5 to win the US Open, a tournament that he's done okay in previously, but it's not one that it's not one where it springs to mind. You think, yes, this is Scotty Scheffler's week. That's really poor value, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think the US Open of all the four majors is the one where you want to take on the market leaders, because the courses are so tough. There are courses where if you make a mistake, even a little mistake, you're going to get punished, right? Not like even with Augusta, you can get away with it kind of. Here it can cost you 1, 2, even 3 shots, and if you're, let's say Ram, a guy with a little bit of a bad temperament, you can bring one bad hole into another one. That's why I think it's a real problem. Unless you're playing the Open Championship where it's real windy, that's probably the toughest test. But other than that, then the US Open, toughest kind of courses. I think only nine players finished on a par at Brookline. And this actually has a kind of Brookline feel. I kind of, just looking at the pictures, it kind of feels like a woodland stroke, peatland kind of terrain, and it's like a rugged look at the bunkers and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's that kind of course. And now I just think if you're taking the shorter prices this week, you're not going to get much value out of that. That's my opinion anyway.
Let's throw some names into the ring then. Because we're talking about all the characteristics. We're talking about the golf course. Sophie Walker, you have written a piece for Pinnacle.com. I've not peeked at it yet, but give us a bit of a general gist as to some of the names that you're really touting on there.
Well, I'm always asked to put a favourite, and it is Scotty Scheffler because of his such consistent form. But then moving down to what would fit my model, maybe a little bit more of a playing model, I suppose, over the Brian stats. I've got Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay. Both of them are very consistent. Neither of them have won a major, but that's okay. 5 out of the last 7 US Open winners have been first timers. Cantlay qualified for the US Open when he was 19 years old. He's finished inside the top 15 in all of the last 4 majors. Both of them are under 70 in their stroke average. And Xander Schauffele is 6th in approach and 11th in strokes gained putting. And mentality-wise, these guys are built for US Opens. Patience, I think people nicely use about Patrick Cantlay's pace of play. Xander has that street fighter, back against the wall style. Both of them, as I say, Californian guys. I would have expected Cantlay to have played this course, considering he went to UCLA college, so it can't be that far away. And it's time, isn't it? When we talk about the best players that have not won a major, those two are right up there. You spoke, didn't you, about Brian, about Memorial? Both great fits for there, obviously. Yeah. So they're my two, my real two. I mean, Schauffele's record is just insane. He had 5 top 10s in a row at a US Open, which only got stopped last year, and it was 14th. So, I mean, he's trending in the US Open. They're my kind of below those top 3 that we talk about seemingly every podcast.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. And just to give the listeners a bit of an idea of the kind of value that you're looking at there. Cantlay 18 as we speak here on Pinnacle.com, and then Xander Schauffele out at 23, which I think is pretty decent. You know, I mean, look, they're still inside the top 10 in terms of favourites, but I think that is where you're getting your value in comparison to Scotty Scheffler, perhaps, even though he is the world number one and is shown lots of consistent form, and seemingly your favourite on the article as well. Just looking a little bit further afield, there's quite a lot of names that are catching my eye that are the live golfers. But as we've seen so far this season, well, mainly because of Brooks Koepka winning at the USPGA Championship at Oak Hill, we know that makes no difference now in the majors. The live thing, not a problem. Doesn't matter if we're seeing them week in, week out at Memorial, Colonial, TPC, Craig Ranch, wherever. It doesn't make a difference. That if you geared up for major golf, you geared up for major golf. Maybe in 5 years' time, if this live thing was carrying on and they were still playing the Mickey Mouse courses in Florida and shooting 25 under, it might have had a bit of a bearing on it. But Brooks Koepka, third favourite, 13 on Pinnacle at time of recording. It's very difficult to try and work out a reason to not back Brooks Koepka, Brian.
Yeah, I just so I'm kind of just looking at the market, and I'm literally just not distinguishing between any tours at all now. I'm just seeing it as it was. So if I just looked at Brooks, I just saw his price. I just thought it was the correct price. So that's the only reason I wouldn't be interested there. Like, you know what I mean? And he does have the perfect profile for this kind of thing. But like Sophie, I'm kind of siding with the kind of, I call them grinders as well this week. So I got it wrong last time with Jordan Spieth. I think I said I kind of fancied him with the, beware the injured golfer and all that, but it turns out he was quite injured. But now that injury is subsiding. And I really do like him again this week, and he's 26.16 at Pinnacle. And I put, so there's a bit of a subjective analysis, obviously, with my model this week, since I don't know the course too well. But I put the premiums in, and he comes out at a course fit rating of 9.37, which is huge, basically. And just looking at a few stats, he's again some of the key iron ranges. He's 15th in 125 to 150 yards, 6th in 150 to 175 yards, which I think is going to be the main stat in terms of approach this week. 7 in scrambling. We all know how good he is, on and around the greens. And if you're talking about, creativity and imagination around the greens, Phil Mickelson, Justin Thomas maybe, but Jordan Spieth just jumps out a mile in that kind of area, and you can get up and down from everywhere, and it's just all mental performance as well, or mental attitude. And another one would be that, so that we were talking about the lag putting earlier. He's 26th in approach putt performance, then warm up at Memorial T5. And he's really, really competitor, obviously. So I actually think Spieth may turn out to be one of the guys to beat, even ahead of some of the market leaders this week. You're getting twice the price in Spieth as you are of some of the other guys. So for me, he's a great bet this week. Jordan Spieth, yeah.
Okay, there we have it. Winless this season, of course, Jordan Spieth.
Next week.
I like that a lot. 26 on Pinnacle.com at time of recording. Looking further afield, Tyrrell Hatton been playing some really nice golf, and has a solid all-round game. Had a brilliant 64 in the final round to nearly post a number to give the leaders something to think about at the Canadian Open. I'm just trying to look down a little bit further afield. It's a name that's caught my eye, and this might not necessarily be somebody who's going to win the US Open. It's hard to imagine that, actually. But at 72 at Pinnacle.com, and we'll get into kind of outsiders here a little bit, is Ricky Fowler. And Ricky Fowler's game has been trending in the right direction all season long. Much improved ball striking performances, much improved around the greens. The putter has got better and better all year long. That's not a bad shout, is it? At 72.
I think at Memorial he was right there, wasn't he? He had a par final round that kind of pushed him down. Was it Memorial? And he pushed him down the leaderboard a bit, and it's maybe a bigger price this week. But yeah, when he was in his prime, he was a brilliant ball striker, and he was a great scrambler and putter. And again, the perfect kind of profile to be looking for this week. So I looked at him myself there around that price and said, yeah, not a bad bet at all. But I haven't actually got him on the short list, but I definitely wouldn't put anybody else backing him at that price. Yeah. You mentioned Hatton there, though. I do have him on the short list. He's 38.29 Pinnacle, and he's just an absolute all-round machine, basically. 12th at Memorial there. Missed out on it by a shot last week, obviously, for the playoff. He's third in strokes gained total. Strokes gained putting, he's seventh. 11th in approach. And interestingly enough, so going into this week on the hard course, you want the guys who are really at the top of the form now. I'm sure his stats the form model is 9.93. Top guys in terms of current form now. He's 11th on scrambling. He's fourth in total putting, fourth in approach book performance. Again, they said live putting is going to be, up there this week. Course fit 9. With Tyrrell again, it's going to be how he reacts to a bad hole or two. You know what I mean? If he can keep that under control. I mean, he's going on birdie. He's going birdie. I think he birdied the last 4 holes again yesterday to get to 16 under. So
yeah, he did.
I think he's going to win one, a big one, and he's going to win one soon. So he's definitely on my radar this week as well. Yeah, it's a good price, nearly 40. I'd be definitely on side with Tyrrell. Yeah.
Nice, Sophie. Any more names you want to throw at us from that kind of top to middle bracket?
Well, when I wrote my article, it was Justin Rose, but I imagine after a decent finish last week at the Canadian Open, he's probably shrunk a little bit. He's inside the top 30 in the world, and that's a number you've got to look at for a player that's going to win the US Open. Top 30 in the world is a very key stat for the winners. You don't get that randomer that we might have seen at an Open Championship or a PGA at times. It just doesn't happen with a US Open. And with it being Ryder Cup year, I think he's in now. But what a push he's done by winning at Pebble Beach. So he was my kind of middle one. But my outsider is a guy that is literally just qualified for the US Open. So I don't even know if his odds will be in there. Is Eric Cole's odds in there?
Eric
James?
Cole, let's have a look. As of time of recording, no, absolutely not. But I know yeah, that's a good shout,
Yeah, well, I mean, he's top 10 last week. So we talk about players in form. He's from California. He came 15th at the PGA. He is the second best putter on tour, and he hasn't had a 3-putt in 331 holes. Now, luckily, Brian said it didn't matter too much off the tee this week. So if that's the case, then he'll look pretty good. My only worry is he's on his 10th straight week in a row, which is unbelievably insane.
That is crackers.
But he's a rookie, and they love it, don't they? They'll learn when they get another 5 years.
Run on adrenaline, maybe this week, and then take a break.
Exactly. From Palm Springs, it's California, and like, oh my goodness, the US Open in like my home state. Hopefully, he'll run on fumes, well. But I thought the way he sets up to it and that form that he carries, it might just be worth looking. So hopefully when it is updated finally, because there is a lot of people that qualify a bit late on for this US Open, just keep an eye out for him. He's inside the top 100 in the world, and I think his odds will be nice.
Yes, yeah, they will be, won't they? Yeah, purely by virtue of the fact that he's a relative unknown. And we say that, I mean, even as people who really follow the game, he's had some good finishes, lost in a playoff at the Honda Classic to Chris Kirk, had some of the good top fives, and then obviously, like you say, a really strong finisher, course record equaling 63 on Sunday, yesterday at the Canadian Open. So I think that's a good shout, Sophie, really nice, because you don't really go for players outside the top 30 in the world. That's a bit of a rule of thumb that I think is worth stressing when we're looking at a US Open winner. But I think we can make a little exception for Eric Cole, just purely because 10 weeks in a row, though, come on, that guy's going to need a 3-week holiday somewhere. And he's earned some cash this year.
I actually have a very similar, so I put him into the plotter stroke grinder kind of, category as well. And I have a very similar guy to him on my shortlist as well, which is Denny McCarthy. So he's in flying form, obviously, this week. He's really disappointed to miss out there at Memorial. And so his strength is on the green. He's first in putting inside 10 feet this season. And, like you said earlier, we're going to, like 3 4 footers coming back. They're going to be very important this week. He's fourth in strokes game, putting all together. He actually said in an interview after the Memorial, he was really gutted, but he was real positive that he'd be back. He says he loves grinder type courses. He loves the hard courses, the hard setups. He's he's not off the tee. He's not. That's probably his weakness. And we said earlier that doesn't really matter so much this week. So yeah, did I mention the Sedgefield link earlier? That I think there's a Sedgefield kind of link. So he's averaged 15th there in the last 3 events, and that's the recent 3 events there. He's averaged 15th, so he's always kind of there. He was top 10 at the Wells Fargo. That's in Quail Hollow was in a real championship course. The progressive form model, he's 9.0 out of 10. And just I think he's had a week now to get over his Memorial down, and I can see him just coming up. Even if he's not challenging from the top, as an outsider for like a top 10 kind of bet or something like that. And I think he's a really similar player in profile to Eric Cole, just really steady Eddie kind of players. And like Sophie says, I think we can see any kind of player win this week. It's gonna be about approach and around and on the greens, and guys that keep the bogeys off the cards.
Difficult to disagree with that, actually, Brian. And also 120 on Pinnacle, that is serious value, particularly since you don't get into a playoff to have a crack at winning the Memorial if your game's not looking sharp. And then he's obviously, like you say, had that week off. So, it's not like he's coming straight into it completely burnt out.
But it wasn't. It was just more that, like, you'd see he was visibly very upset, but he was really adamant that he'd be back. It wasn't going to stop him. So I love that about him. He seemed like really competitive nature. But not just the outright. Like, we can back him in the sub markets. We can back him top 10, top 20. The prices are out there, and yeah, I think that's definitely something to look at. But I really do think the Sedgefield link something this week that when you see the greens, the real sloping right to front greens, that's what Sedgefield is all about. And there's Bermuda rough and Sedgefield as well, and approach and then what you do on the greens there. And I think you could see some correlations at the top of the board between players that do well there and don't do well this week.
Okay, into the last 5 minutes of the podcast, we're just gonna talk about anything else that we want to talk about before we wrap up. Something I do want to point out is that Sergio Garcia, since turning professional, has never not qualified for a US Open until it looked like this year, when obviously all of his exemptions from winning the Masters and having strong finishes on the PGA Tour, that kind of thing, because he jumped ship and gone to live and not had any decent showings in any of the majors recently, he wasn't exempt. So what did he do? Very un-Sergio-like thing to do this. Got on a plane, went and played qualifying, 36-hole qualifier, got himself in. That's a man who's taking this very, very seriously. You'd think at his stage of his career and some of the stories that you hear about him, I won't go into it, but you wouldn't have really thought that was an attitude that he would adopt. Clearly, he means a bit of business. You've got to have a sharp game to qualify for a US Open. I know that you might think, well, these US Open qualifiers, how hard can they be when you've won the Masters? Trust me, the standard is incredibly high. He's out at 189 on Pinnacle, and I'm not saying that Sergio Garcia is going to win the US Open because we've got nothing to base that kind of outlandish comment on. However, he's clearly in the right headspace. His game's all right. I can't believe he's way down at 189 on Pinnacle.com. I think if you're going to put some little bit of extra cash that you've got on something, throw it away, maybe just a little top 10 for Sergio, because I think that would be something that you can clearly imagine happening.
If you're talking profile, Sergio is that perfect profile for the course. Great short game, the Spanish hands. Tita Marine is just
the ball striking,
shot shaping, and but just approach play and what he can do around the greens, which is going to be really important this week. So if he's qualified there, over 36 holes, he's probably got that working. So we don't know, obviously, because of the live, we don't know exactly how they've been playing a lot of the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you were focusing on the qualifiers, and obviously he's in good form then. So yeah, it's a big price.
Yeah, it's a big price. Okay, Sophie, any other business before we wrap up?
I just looked at the weather. Looks pretty consistent all week, about 20, 21 degrees, very, very light winds, no rain. So in terms of side of the draw, you don't need to worry about that.
That's good. That's a really important thing to point out because we've seen that, haven't we? Pretty much every big event that I can think of this year, the weather has played a part in terms of, Thursday, Friday. Anyway, there we go. That's a good thing to look out for. Definitely keep an eye on that as we get a bit closer. Maybe Wednesday night, if you're still sort of working out some of your picks and you're leaving it that late, definitely have a look at that weather forecast. Important point. Brian, any other business before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll just drop in a few from the Sedgefield link down a few of them. I think Justin Rose actually has a good record with Sedgefield, going back a long way as well. But there's three guys I have from earlier in the year or last year. Tom Kim, he started with a quadruple bogey or something at Sedgefield and then ended up blitzing the field in the tournament. So
Yeah.
he obviously likes the course. There's Russell Henley is another. He's three top tens the last 3 years at Sedgefield. He's approach wise, he's in my profiles, he's 10 out of 10 in both short and long irons. He was actually second last year to, I think, probably Maricella in the approach stats, but last few years we actually looked closely. He's nearly as good as Maricella in the approach stats of the official sites. Now the other one is Siwoo Kim, who absolutely loves Sedgefield. He's won there. He has a second, third, another fifth. So these kind of guys, I think, and they're really handsomely priced as well. And Siwoo is in brilliant form at the moment. He's playing some of the best stuff he's been playing in a long time, actually. So Tom Kim is a bit in and out of form, yeah, but Siwoo he's right up there last week as well, actually. So he's definitely one to look at now. He's 100.64 at Pinnacle, and his progressive form 9.4. So he's fourth at Memorial, and yeah, again he's averaging 7.5 in the approach range from 150 to 200 yards on tour, and he's 26th in scrambling. Again, with him, it'd be just his mentality. Can you keep it going? And he has one or two bad problems. He can. I mean, he's won the Players Championship, so I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him actually win this. Never mind top 10.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating. Looking forward to seeing this golf course.
Great
Brian.
course. They call it hidden gem or something. They were
Yeah.
referring to it.
Yeah, there is, and I think actually the way that all the pundits and people who know that part of the world have been going on about it, it's going to be a cracking week. And if the weather's nice, that's good enough for us. Sophie, Brian, thanks so much. That is another episode of Major Talk done and dusted. Is the year's third men's golfing major, the US Open Championship at LA Country Club. Hopefully, you've gained a little bit of betting insight there. Of course, all odds were correct at the time of recording. I want to point you once again into the direction of Sophie's article previewing the tournament and also Brian's piece talking about the potential impact of this LIV and PGA Tour merger. We'll report back in July ahead of the Open Championship. All that remains for me to say is thanks for listening and goodbye.